this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. In this video I'm going to do what I said I was going to do in a previous video, which is just get all the component parts of my Bulbophyllum Elizabethan Buckleberry in one place instead of in several. First job, let's get them out of the pot. Now this was 3 back bulbs basically when I repotted the mother plant. These older parts of the plant were just, quite honestly, in the way, and it wouldn't go in the pot with them still attached, so I detached them and planted them. And they've all grown a new growth. At least I think they've individually grown a new growth. There might be one grew 2 and the other one hasn't grown. But first job is to get them out of the pot and see what we got. These haven't been in this pot that long. The back bulbs didn't really have a root system worth talking about, but let's see if they're going to separate nicely. There's one. Yeah, they've individually grown a new growth, that's good. And that one's decided to attach itself, fire a couple of roots to one of the others. So there, we've got 3 pieces there. The older bulbs, what were back bulbs, have actually got roots, so they can stay. And they've both pushed out. You can see where I severed the rhizome there. Get them off. That stump. And as I said, they've all 3 of them produced a new growth, and all of the new growths are now starting to push out some roots. So, I mean, to get that one in the pot and get those roots into something, it'll have to be planted at an angle, which makes that leaf a bit of a nuisance. But if I detach them, they lose the strength of the back bulb. I mean, these are quite weak growths as it is. Anyway, that's one. Now this one's actually starting yet another new growth. So all I need to do with this one is make sure that I can get all of the roots in the pot. Yeah, I think there'd be a bit of washing under the tap. Quite sure why, but there's quite a lot of large bark in here. But that was probably what I used to crop the bottom of the pot. Not expecting them to grow, and then the roots got down to the bottom of the pot and grabbed hold of the big bits of bark. But anyway, we'll give that a rinse off. That's a nice little piece, and the roots on the latest growth are actually quite long, so that one can be planted relatively high in the pot so that this growth is, you know, the roots are in there and then the new growth can take off. That's that one. And this piece, actually there's a swelling at the base of that one, so that latest growth looks like it's also starting to push a new growth out. I'm not going to bother trimming too much here. Basically this has not been in the pot long, so this media is not breaking down, it's not old, so if there's some bits still stuck, so be it. But what I want to do is give the whole of the base of the plant a spray with the hydrogen peroxide, because there's a combination of some moss and some algae here. This is moss around the base of that plant. Now if that takes over the top of the new pot, I'll actually be quite pleased, but hopefully the algae would die anyway, because obviously it's been in a clear pot, it's now going in a clay pot. So if you shut the light out, you don't get the algae. And if moss grows across the top of the pot, it'll improve the look of it and help keep the base of the plants hydrated. So I'll have to go steady what I do with that. Now the big pot full, there's a skewer got put in there to hold the rhizomes in place, which I'm hoping will come out okay. Yep. Tag. And this one has produced that extension here with 2 growths on. This one flowered, this one hasn't yet, but may well do. That was its first new growth, which extended from what I bought, and then it produced this growth out here, which does have a new growth coming and has already bloomed. In fact, most of the older bulbs on here, oh, and it also has that big new growth starting there, lower in the pot. So this has got quite a few leads on it, this piece. And again, it hasn't been in the pot too long, so I'm not particularly worried about getting all of the old media off. It's not bad. It's not a bad root system, plus I've got the new roots coming on the most recent growths. So, how many pieces is this? This is more than one piece. That's good, because we've got a nice piece there, starting off with a single bulb, an extension, not very strong, that then split into two, pushed up that growth, both of which bloomed, and now this rhizome has decided to go aerial and climb skywards. That's not a lot of good like that. I'm going to have to try and see if it'll bend and strap it. That's one piece, not bad roots there. A little bit of moss around the base, yeah? I'm going to leave that. I literally do not want to kill that moss. I'd love that moss to grow right across the top of the pot. Looks good in clay, it looks good in plastic pots, but it does look good in clay. As I say, I'm not going to mess about with these roots too much. This media is not old, not by any means. So that's one piece. That one. Now, is this all one piece, or is this two? This is two as well. I know when I potted it, where I took the back bulbs off, the rhizomes got separated, but I wasn't sure how many, my memory's not that good, how many actual pieces I would have. This means I can crisscross these pieces in the new pot and make sure that the new growths, hopefully, are not round the edge of the pot. They're in the middle. And then the next new growth has still got some pot to get into instead of reaching for the sky and going aerial. Yeah, so that extended once, that bulb then extended in two directions. This one's bloomed, new growth here, that one didn't bloom, and that may produce another new growth. But I'm going to have to do a bit of pinning and staking here to try and get some of these rhizomes down in the pot better. And this piece is, what am I going to do with that? They do bend, they're not that bad. I might actually take that one off. That will give me a shorter piece with the new extension. These are quite long extensions, rhizomes on this plant, so it ends up gappy. Nothing's ever going to grow here. So I think that one, yeah, that one can come off. That still gives me a 3-bulb extension. With what will be a new growth here. I can see the swelling already. So yeah, I think that one can come off. That'll enable me to get it in the pot better. But I haven't had to do that for a while. Check a rhizome is good. Every time I cut a rhizome I look for pretty colours. Obviously I don't want to see any. You can get fooled looking for those pretty colours because some rhizomes naturally have a purplish colouring on them, not to be confused with something that shouldn't be there. Okay, that's all the pieces. I'm not cleaning them up that much, quite honestly. They're not in old media. It's not like I want to wash everything off, but I do want to clear up before I start mucking about the new pot. So I'll have a clear up and I'll be back. Okay, here we go then. That's the pot all those pieces are going to go in. They're all in the sink at the moment. I'll get them out as I need them. Clay pots. Clay has different grades basically, from soft through to rock hard. If you're going to put orchids in pots, it pays not to use glazed pots because obviously there's no water absorption whatsoever. Now if that's what you need, great, but most of the time it's not. If you want to find out how soft clay is, put some water on it. You can see that water's going in pretty quick. Yeah, so that's, I'd say, about medium clay. It's not as soft as I at first thought it was, but nonetheless it's capable of absorbing water. Now there will be a limit to how much water that pot can hold before it becomes saturated and no more water can be absorbed. And with something like bulbophyllums that need to stay moist, that's an important point to bear in mind. Yeah, I do not want this clay pot taking all the moisture out of the media. So I've got a little trick, and the little trick is I'm going to line it with moss. So if anything, it's going to take the moisture out of the moss, and as you know with moss, it can hold a hell of a lot of water. That's going to kill two birds with one stone, because it's also going to stop the media falling out of the holes. Which it would do otherwise, wouldn't it, if you think about it. Now these are shallow rooters, bulbophyllums. They do not need a deep run. And to try and contain this flipping plant in the pot and stop it crawling all over the place, I'm going to pot them shallow. So they're actually going right down in the pot. Now the way that the spikes are produced, they come up away from the plant and then arch. So I don't expect the flowers to appear down in the pot. They should come out up over the top and over the edge. But there's a level at which I don't want to go above. So I'm just putting enough moss in there to get me up to the ring of holes at which I'll stop adding media. If a little bit goes up and falls out, it's not the end of the world. Once it gets watered in, it will settle. So there we go. It's just like doing a hanging basket, really. It's a lining of moss that holds a hell of a lot of water and should stop the clay sucking the water out of the media, and you'd end up with a ring of very dry media around the edge, which I don't want. Right, so that's that done. As you can see, I've just put a lining round over the bottom hole, which is quite large. In fact, I'll put another little lump there in case it falls out, otherwise I'm just going to end up with media on the floor. So it has a lining of moss. Now unfortunately I've used all my moss lining this. Just need a little bit there. Obviously I need the moss up to a consistent level in a ring round there, otherwise I'm going to get low bits. But as long as those low bits of moss aren't too bad, then that'll do the job. But I do want some more moss in my mix, and I've used it all doing the lining the pot at the moment, so we're just going to have to get some more on the soak. Now this moss takes in its water very quickly, and although it won't be fully hydrated at that point, flipping stick in there, you do get all sorts in this moss. The thing that you can get, which is not very nice, is thorns. And then you go to wring your moss out and find you've got a thorn sticking in somewhere, and they nearly always break off. You end up with the broken off tip of the thorn stuck in you. Right, so let's get that out of the way, get some moss in with the mix. As I said, these bulbophyllums like to stay moist, and the moss mixed in here will help that happen. That moss I used in the pot didn't need breaking up or anything like that. In fact, the longer strands make it stay in place. But when I start mixing it in with the media, I like to break it up. And then when I stir it in with the media, it's much more evenly distributed throughout the media. If you leave it in long strands, you can get bits of the media that have got no moss, and other bits have got quite a lot all in one place. And then you get wet patches. And we don't want wet patches, do we? So just break up some of that. Get that in amongst it, stir that lot in. Now this is an unusual mix. It's mainly small bark, perlite and broken up sphagnum. But when I potted my Deesers, I had, not much, but I had some mix left over. Now that mix didn't have any bark in it. What it did have is very coarse peat and perlite and sphagnum moss. And I thought, well, rather than waste it, we'll chuck it in here, because it's going to be very thinly distributed. It wasn't a lot left over, so this has actually got a little bit of coarse peat in it. Not much. It was just to bulk it up. The problem I've got is I'm nearly out of the small bark. I saw Peter White at the meeting, and he said, at the moment, sorry son, I haven't got any. But the latest shipment is on its way, because that comes from New Zealand, I believe, the Orchiata bark. And then he said, we've got a problem with bark this year because of all the fires in California, which is where a lot of the bark comes from. Obviously they're going to be short. And those that would normally use the Californian bark are going to want the Orchiata instead. And when the shipment arrives on the docks, it's first come, first served, and when it's gone, it's gone. So he's not even confident he's going to get any. He said they don't seem to take much notice of pre-orders. So although he's told them what he wants, if other people get there first, and when he gets there he says, I ordered this, they'll just look at him and say, well, it's all gone, sorry. Which is not very nice, but you know, they bring it over here to make a profit. Who they sell it to, they don't care. So what are we going to do with this? I'm going to leave that back bulb on. We'll start this one afresh. Yeah, I've got a lot of pieces to get in here. I think I'm going to take that, because this is the bulb that's split, and I've got new growth there, one with roots, one without. The roots will come. And that bulb, I could plant it, I'm not going to throw it yet. I could just trim that off there and poke a couple of back bulbs in here. The last lot of back bulbs grew, as you saw. But what I don't want is a shed load of new growths around the edge of the pot. So I'm just going to have to place these, get the media in on top, and then move them around and get them where I want. See, now that one's going to be awkward, isn't it? Because that leaf is pointing downwards. Yeah? I might have to put that one around the edge of the pot, literally, just to keep that leaf upright. Yep. I think we can probably accommodate it somewhere like that. And it's resting on the edge of the pot, so it will twist. And that's the other back bulb I've already cut off. And then we've got this one. It's got a nice strong new growth coming out, and it's got this silly one that's sticking straight up in the air. Well, it's just going to have to stay where it is, you know. I mean, if it doesn't grow very well because the roots don't get in the media, well, so be it. I'll cut it off at a later date if it shows signs of going downhill. Old flower spike there, that can come off. So that's not a bad piece, and that's a piece with moss on. But I want this end in the middle of the pot, not on the edge of the pot. Now some of these rhizomes are going to have to cross over to get the plant bits where I want them. So be it. I'll steady them all up when I start putting the media in. And that's one of the original back bulbs. Whoops. And that does have a new growth coming, and I want that new growth again pointing into the centre. So that one's going to have to go slightly on its side, which means the oldest bulb will be down in the media, but there's plenty of air in this media. It's not like they're going to rot off with any luck. Now this back bulb has shot up in the air, yeah. So again, twist it slightly on its side and get that as close to the media as possible, and as near to the middle of the pot as I can get it. We're getting quite a pot full here, aren't we? And then we've got this bit. That's not too bad because both the bulbs are upright and they're both at the same height. So that will go in nicely. Now where's a gap where there aren't many new growths at the moment? About there. I think you can go there. Right on top of another piece. Well, in the wild they grow all over the place. And then I've got these two back bulbs that may or may not grow. But they certainly won't grow if they don't get given a chance. So I'm just going to find a bit of space and poke them in. I mean, that is a good sized strong bulb there. I don't see any reason why that shouldn't shoot out. As I said, it won't if I don't plant it, will it? So we'll chuck that one in there. So they're all over the place, they're all at different heights, and now I'm going to have to try and adjust them as the media settles down around them, and just wiggle it round so that it gets all in amongst the roots, doesn't leave too many air gaps, if any. I'd rather not have any air gaps on this, I must admit. And I'm going to have to rely on watering it to settle this media in. I mean, obviously I can pour as much water as I like over this, literally as much as I like. And start to think about settling the bulbs in certain places just by putting media in through the gaps, and then gradually they will sort themselves out as I go round. If I'm going to have enough, I really haven't got much more small bark at all. There's still a fair bit here. Look round here, see what's going on. So I'm trying not to bury the older pseudo bulbs, but some of them just might end up being a little bit lower in the media than I would normally do if I was planting small plants. But when you're trying to get a pot full like this, they just end up where they end up. And there's some new growth coming up through there. I don't want to bury that because that new growth is already starting to extend. I don't want to bury that particular piece of greenery. I'm nearly there now. This one's a bit, it's arched like that. The two ends are okay, but the one in the middle, the roots are high. Well, I can just put an extra little bit in under there, because once the roots touch the media, they'll go down in it. And you only need to touch it, and that's it. It just triggers them to grow, and they'll get right down in it. Right, still see a few bare roots poking out. Some there. Nearly there. Some there. You're in there. Not very secure. I'm hoping that these are going to push on with their root system and actually hold them in place, because they're all a little bit wobbly, but to try and secure that many pieces of plant is almost impossible. I'm just checking now to make sure that I haven't got bulbs buried too badly and roots are covered in. I can still see some bare roots over there. Get over there. That's better. Right, I think that'll do. And that is a good pot full. And a good soaking now will probably wash half of that media straight out the holes. And I haven't got much to top it up with, but it should settle those pieces down into the media. The watering with a small fine media like that has a compacting effect. If that was large pieces of bark, it would virtually have no effect at all. The bark would just sit there wherever it is. But with the smaller media, it does actually have a settling effect by pouring water over. Not a dribble, you've got to give it a good go. And then just literally the water makes the media move and settles it into places where it can get. So I think that's going to be it. Whew. And a lot of the new growths are now nearer the middle of the pot, or pointing towards the middle of the pot. So a lot of the new growth on this plant now should be in the middle, coming up. Yeah, it should settle itself down. And hopefully those couple of back bulbs that I put in will actually root and push out new growths. And we'll have even more potential for blooms. But at the moment there's 4 or 5 newish growths on there that are not the best size by any means. They are smaller bulbs, but I've seen this actual plant bloom on those size bulbs before. So we'll wait and see. Anyway, it's something a bit different, something a bit unusual. A bowl full of bulbophyllum. Where's my tags? Actually, I don't normally keep flippy floppy tags like that, but you know, that's got a little history on it of the guy that I chatted to and you know, bought it from. He's a really nice guy. He turns up at the RHS show regular, and he often has some unusual stuff. And he'll also be at Malvern. Nice sky. So we'll just tuck that down the edge there. I'm going to keep that original label. As I said, it's got a memory of where I bought the plant from and the chat I had about it and all that sort of stuff. There we go then, that's one done. I think I've got about 33 or 34 more plants to do. And that wasn't even urgent. But this has got the ability to be hung. It's got the holes in the side to get wires in. Because that's going to take up a lot of shelf space. As much as the two original pots. I haven't saved any shelf space. But if I can get some wires on that, I can find somewhere to hang it, and I'll let you know if I bang my head on it. You'll probably hear me talking about it, because that's like the corner of a wooden basket, you know, that's not something to bang your head against. But I'm going to see if I can find somewhere for that to actually hang. I've got a couple of leaves that are upside down here, so the old photosynthesis won't be too clever on those, will it? Facing the wrong way. But there's nothing much you can do when you've got plants like that. The majority of the leaves are facing upwards. That will do for now. Right, thanks for dropping by. See you next time.